Rachel Bell, and this is Your Last Meal, the show where celebrities share stories about the foods they love most, and we dig into the history, culture, or science of those meals with experts from around the world. Today on the program, it's G-Love. His first album, G-Love and the Special Sauce, came out in 1994. What is happening? And they just released the 30th anniversary deluxe edition featuring the original 14 songs remastered. And if you buy it on vinyl, you get a second record with rare B-sides and live tracks. This is the album with My Baby's Got Sauce, Your Baby Ain't Sweet Like Mine, which Seattle's legendary indie radio station, KEXP, named the top song of 1994. G-Love has a bunch of songs that mention food and drink, like Milk and Cereal.
We started playing the song, and the crowd response was awesome. We cut the song, and then the label said, Sony said, oh, hell no, we're not putting out a song about milk and cereal on the next G-Love record, so they didn't.
He'll tell us how Milk and Cereal became a cult classic anyway. Then we will quench our curiosity and learn all about the long, varied, and fascinating history of one of the most refreshing summertime cold beverages, lemonade. That's all coming up later in the show. But first, my conversation with G-Love. So it is the 30th anniversary of your debut album. I'm just so curious because you were 21 when you wrote it. You're 51 now. I just love how good I am at math. They never said creatives were good at math. How do these songs resonate with you now? Because, 21, you were kind of a kid and you're still playing this music that everybody loves.
Thank you. Yeah, we have to give it all back to the fans because 30 years, it is quite an accomplishment. To do anything for 30 years, people have to come to the shows, and it's something we never take for granted. The songs, it's funny because, I was a kid when I wrote these songs, and they still resonate. Of course, there's some that I play every night and have played, every night for 30 years. And I'm not just saying this, I really do have as much fun and connection playing them now as I did when I wrote them. And part of that has to do with the fact that people love them, and part of it has to do with the fact that they're great songs. I've tried to recreate them. There's something about the lyrics. The lyrics are poetry. The music is very unique. I've literally gone back for a song like Cold Beverage, mapped it out and said, what is it about this song, right? What is it that works about this song? And I've tried to follow that roadmap and write a new song using that map, and it never works out. So I don't know. It was a special time in life when I wrote those songs. It was a special atmosphere in the world and in the world of music. So we were lucky to come along when we did, and we found a niche, and the songs mean as much as ever.
That's so interesting, the idea of trying to break it down and see if there's a formula to recreate, because that kind of just speaks to the fact that creativity is not a science. And, thinking of modern times and people wanting to make everything into AI, there's more than that. There's something that was happening with you at the time. And maybe it was because you weren't trying as hard, and maybe it was because it was a certain time in your life where things were flowing in a different way. So you can never predict a hit.
Yeah, it's such a good point because, a lot of times you'll talk to your management or whatever. Well, we need a hit. Well, what do you think I'm trying to do? I mean, that's what every musician is trying to do, right? You're really trying to hopefully really express yourself with a true emotion, right?
This is a food podcast, and it's pretty interesting that you have several songs that reference food and drink.
Okay,
and I was curious about some of the backstory. So the first song I want to ask you about, I was especially excited to see the backstory because I went to college at Chico State. I lived in Chico for 7 years, and I saw that the song Cereal and Milk was born in a parking lot in Chico.
That's right. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. Milk and Cereal. After the show, I was maybe smoking my little doobie on the bus and might have just poured myself a bowl of some peanut butter Captain Crunch and as a late night treat. And I took a bite and I just sang out Milk and Cereal. And then my background singers, Chad and Earl, they were sitting across from me on the bench, and they might have looked back at me and said in perfect harmony, cereal and milk. And then literally went down like this. And for the next 2 weeks, we wrote this ridiculous song about, cereal and kind of tapping all the commercials that I don't know how old you are, but that I grew up with in the 80s, the cereal commercial the jingles were unbelievable. So everything's in there. Tricks Out for Kids, Snap, Crackle, Pop, Pink Hearts, Yellow Moons, Green Clovers,
Yeah.
So yeah, we had a lot of fun with that. And
Follow your nose. It always knows.
that's right. And the funny thing was that we started playing the song, and it was like clear right away that this was a hit. And the crowd response was awesome. So we went to record our fourth record. We cut the song, and then the label said, Sony said, oh, hell no, we're not putting out a song about milk and cereal on the next G Love record. So they didn't. They wouldn't let it. I was like, this is a hit. That's crazy. So we didn't put it out. Remember the things called record stores? You go to remember those places?
Yeah.
So we go to the record store, you buy a CD and you get a CD extra, right? It'll be like a little EP. So it was on an EP, and two kids from UVM, they did a video for Milk and Cereal right when YouTube started, and it went viral. And you couldn't buy the record. It did become really famous, and later General Mills used it in a commercial. So
They did?
it all worked out.
For which cereal?
They used it for like all their cereals. They changed the words and the music and had a woman sing it. So I wasn't even on the recording, but I don't even know why they paid us because they hardly use any of the song. But they did it to promote like the fiber and their elevated nutritional status in their cereals.
Yes, which was exactly what your song was about, fiber.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so wait, did it eventually find its way on an album?
No. Although it might be on our bootleg, which is called Front Porch Lounging. But yeah, no, it never was. But it is on Spotify now, I think.
Funny. That's just like, I just saw the Red Hot Chili Peppers at the Gorge this last weekend in Washington.
Oh, my God.
Their song Soul to Squeeze is only on the Coneheads soundtrack.
Oh, okay.
That kind of feels similar. It's not actually on one of their albums.
Right.
So I'm sure because of the song, everyone asks you, and I have to, even though I feel dumb asking it because it's so obvious. But what is your favorite cereal? Geez, I don't really know. I don't really eat a lot of cereal. I guess I'm just gonna be super boring right now and say granola. But I do think Grape Nuts is a really funny cereal to talk about from the 80s and 70s because they were like little rocks made of some kind of part of the wheat kernel that were impossible to eat, and your parents would give them to you, and it would be like torture. I mean, I actually really like Grape Nuts, but you can
I know
only
they're
eat
good.
so much until you're like, I'm tired. My face is tired.
As adults, we love them. Like, put them on ice cream.
Yeah.
They're great. But as a kid, you're like, no, they're little rocks.
I only like boring cereals. Cheerios, Grape Nuts, Crispix. Like when I was a kid, all I wanted was the sweet cereal and we weren't allowed to have them. And I felt like when I'm an adult, I'm just going to eat all those Captain Crunches.
Right.
And like too late, I already like healthy stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Honey Nut Cheerios was a good one, though, I remember, because like my mom wouldn't buy sugar cereal, but she would buy like Honey Nut Cheerios because for some reason, a marketing campaign that made people be like, oh, well, it's Cheerios, it's healthy, but it's probably has the same amount of sugar as, Captain Crunch. Let's be honest.
My mom would buy that too. She also fell for that scam. Okay, the other song I want to know the story behind is Cold Beverage.
Okay. Do you ever have those times when you look at a word hits you in a certain way? So that was the stat. I was reading this kind of a musician's rag. I was waiting for the brakes to get fixed on my 1963 Dodge Dart. I was in Brighton, Massachusetts, and I saw the word cold beverage. And I was like, cold beverage? I like cold beverage.
I like the sound of that.
I did. I was like, and I said, I like cold beverage. And so I started writing, I wrote the lyric around the outskirts of this little rock and roll, fanzine. And then musically I went home, and a lot of my stuff was derivative of blues riffs that I was learning from Robert Johnson or Lightning Hopkins, Big Bill Brunsey, to name a few people. Yeah, I mean, it's just a drinking song, and I think that was sticky, like, I like cold beverage, yeah. I mean, it was a sticky thing, and that's what you're always looking for as a songwriter. And other notable things, being from Philadelphia, it's the first song that mentions the word Jawn, Jawn. It's become kind of a famous slang word in the East Coast Philadelphia region, which means basically a thing. Just anything is a Jawn.
How do you use it in a sentence?
Well, you can say, yo, I like that Jawn. And I could be talking about a person. I could be talking about this cup of coffee. I could be talking about a chair, anything. It's just a thing. A person, place, or a thing. Yeah, that joint's dope. It could be about a song. Oh, yeah, that joint sounds dope. Or it could be about a girl. Yeah, well, yeah. Well, that's. I'm not going to touch
She's
that.
a John too.
or a woman could say that about a guy. Yeah, I like that joint.
So was this popular slang like decades ago and it's still popular today?
It started out as a slang word that was used by the African American community. It's become more appropriated by the broader culture in Philadelphia. My rapping partner was from Augusta, Georgia. He would call it that Jan. Yo, that Jan is cool. And I was like, oh, you call it Jan, we call it John.
This John needs to take a break. Did I say it right? When we come back, G Love's lemonade tattoo takes us down the rabbit hole into the history of lemonade. Like I mentioned earlier, food and drink come up quite a bit in G Love's lyrics. And one cold beverage that has a lot of symbolism for G is lemonade. He has an album called Lemonade, and it comes up in his song, Baby's Got Sauce.
Lemonade. See, I got the lemonade tattoo. Lemonade was always a real significant part of the imagery that I associated with my blues. Sitting on the front porch with a pitcher of lemonade, practicing guitar and writing songs was my jam forever. I always practice with a pitcher of lemonade. It's old-fashioned. It's Southern. Everything about it to me says blues music. And then because it was such a part of my routine, I said, well, if I ever get a record deal, I'm going to get lemonade tattooed on my arm. And so I did. When I got my record deal, we were finishing up that first record, went and got that tattoo. And that was my first tattoo.
To G Love, lemonade represents the blues, but it has other cultural symbolism. Everyone knows the expression, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade, taking a sour situation and making it sweet. That phrase was actually at the heart of Beyoncé's decision to name her album Lemonade. What is believed to be the history of lemonade, at least as far as what has been recorded?
Well, we're going to have to go really far back to the 12th century.
That's Anne Ewbank, associate editor at Gastro Obscura and author of the article, The Sweet History of Lemonade.
There was a Jewish physician named Ibn Jumay, and he was living in Egypt, and he wrote a book called On Lemon, Its Drinking and Use. And this was a book filled with medicinal uses for lemon. It was kind of not a recreational drink. He suggested making this mixture of lemon juice and sugar to give to patients. And that is one of the first recorded recipes we have for lemonade. For a lot of its history, it was a medicine, something you would give to someone with a fever if you wanted to help their digestion. But eventually people were just drinking lemonade for fun.
Just for fun.
Exactly.
It's interesting because, all of us who have had lemonade have not really noticed any medicinal effects. And the fact that for hundreds of years, they were using this medicinally. What was this curing for them?
So sugar was always a really big part of old-timey medicine. Sugar provides a lot of energy. Like you drink a glass of lemonade, you have some candy, you feel a bit more energetic. So I always wonder if it was less the lemon and more just the sugar that was really helping.
So then let's move into the next block of history. In your article, at least, you jumped to the 17th century in Paris, where lemonade became a drink for pleasure and not just a medicinal.
Exactly. And people were walking around, these vendors with giant tanks on their back and just dispensing lemonade to anybody who wanted it. But, it was still a treat. Lemons weren't extremely common. It was still like a very nice thing to have. There's actually some really cool art out there of these lemonade vendors carrying these tanks around, and lemonade vendors setting up these beautiful stands that are decorated. And a lot of times, lemonade vendors were beautiful young women. Some of them would actually become quite famous for their beauty. People would go to these lemonade stands just to see these beautiful women selling lemonade.
In the first ever cocktail book, Oxford Nightcaps, published in 1827, there's a recipe for, quote, delicious lemonade that includes gelatinous calf's feet jelly, raw eggs, water, lemons, and sugar.
Calf's foot jelly and eggs were considered extremely good for sick people. So again, lemonade as medicine. For those who don't know, calf's foot jelly is gelatin. You boil a calf's foot. And we think of lemonade as more of like a refreshing drink that you would add ice cubes to and sip. But back then, like how they thought of texture was not quite the same as we think of it today. So I think they enjoyed that kind of more unctuous texture that we might not associate with lemonade these days.
Maybe this was like the original Jello shot, lemonade Jello shot.
Definitely add alcohol to it. And they often did.
In her article, Anne talks about a few lemonade variations from around the world. The Turkish lemonade sounds really good. You wrote that it uses the whole lemon and you grate the lemon zest into the sugar and mix it. Adding the zest would make a big difference. Like it'd be more lemony, but maybe a little bit more of like the bitter notes that would counteract the sugar.
And I think it does create a more concentrated lemonade flavor. And I think people have been doing that for centuries as well, because lemons could be kind of hard to come by. And so you wanted to use as much of it as you could. The one I found most interesting was the lemonade recipe from Portugal and North Africa, which is mazagran, which is a type of lemonade where you mix coffee into it. I want to try it. That sounds delicious to me, but it's cold coffee plus lemon juice plus simple syrup. I think that sounds refreshing.
I went to a coffee shop last year where they were serving cold brew mixed with 7-Up or Sprite.
Wow.
And we ordered it just out of curiosity and it was good. I bet this has a similar kind of flavor to it. It would just have a little bit more of the effervescence. And in Paris, it sounds like you get to assemble your own lemonade to your liking.
Yeah. Citron press. There's 3 little pitchers that you get at your table. One has simple syrup, one has water, and one has lemon juice. And then you get a glass and you get to kind of mix your own lemonade, which is great because everyone has different tastes on how sour they want their lemonade, how sweet they like it. So you get to kind of like mix your own at the table.
You can't think about lemonade without thinking of the lemonade stand, which at least in the US is this job for children.
Yes.
It's like this one loophole where we don't care about child labor, which I don't know if you've ever read these articles that pop up every several years where it will become, I don't know, I guess it's like technically illegal in some states and like police will actually shut a lemonade stand down, which is so ridiculous. Do you know anything about the history of lemonade stands in America?
I think I did start to research this for this article, but it's quite murky. Until the 20th century, it was adults selling lemonade. It was not children.
Did you ever have a lemonade stand?
Oh, absolutely. We actually had a lemon tree at the house where I grew up. And so it was really efficient. You would just pick them off the tree and make lemonade. And I remember a few years ago visiting a friend of mine who is now living in Chicago, and she grew up around the corner from me. And we wanted to make lemonade. And we went to Trader Joe's and we were both staring at the lemons. And she looks at me and she was like, lemons should be free. Because we'd both grown up with lemon trees in our backyard and we were both just like, paying for a lemon feels so wrong. Like lemons should be free.
Do your parents still live in that house with the lemon tree?
They sure do. And the lemon tree's grown taller over the years. It's next to a window. I won't go outside. I'll just kind of punch open the window and yank a lemon and then close the window.
I love this so much. It's so good.
Great.
Yeah, it's funny. I think about my lemonade stand and I lived on the end of a cul-de-sac. It was just really bad marketing. Like nobody was driving by, but we would stand out there and sometimes somebody would come.
Not enough passerby. No. I feel like, people always, especially like when the police go and shut down lemonade stand, there's always these articles about, oh, is this the end of this part of American childhood? But I think it's evolving. I went to a festival the other day and there was some kids who had set up a lemonade stand and they were taking Venmo.
Yeah.
It was all set up. They had the QR code right there. And I was like, this is very efficient.
I've been pressured by these children. This happened to me too, where I was like, no, thanks. I don't have any money, which may or may not have been a lie because I just wanted to keep going. And they were like, we take Venmo. I'm like, oh God. Now I have no out.
Right. I always try to like buy the lemonade from the stands when I'm going by. I'm always, because I want to see how they made it. Most of the time it's pretty good, but sometimes I have gotten like country time lemonade.
Yep.
And I'm like, man, like I'll drink it, but like I wish I wasn't drinking it.
I was also researching pink lemonade. Have you looked into this at all?
I did. I tried to find a really definite source
Hmm.
for it. And you might have found this as well, that for a time in the 19th century, lemonade was very much associated with circuses.
Hmm.
People would go to the circus and they would get a glass of lemonade. The legend goes, I don't know how true this is. The
Yeah.
legend goes that a lemonade vendor at a circus dropped a handful of red hot candies into the lemonade and it dyed it pink. There's this kind of an invention story for this is how pink lemonade first came to be. But people have been adding things to lemonade for a long time. It didn't have to be cow's foot jelly. It didn't have to be eggs. It could also be crushed strawberries, some crushed cherries, some watermelon. You could mix in other fruits to lemonade, and often it would give it like a nice flavor or a nice color.
There's too many food origin stories that involve, oops, I dropped it in, that make me
Yeah.
doubt. I doubt all of those stories now because they all seem fake. It just seems too convenient.
All these cooks are so clumsy. They're just dropping,
I know,
and they're not breaking.
Butterfingers.
It just so coincidentally happens to like be a happy accident.
I know, because if I drop something in, it's the eggshell, things that you want to
Exactly.
fish out and you don't
Hmm.
want, not things that are like, wow, this is better now.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's people like knowing the origin stories of
Yeah.
things, and I feel like if a convenient story does not exist, someone will make one up.
Yeah. Well, the other story that was also circus related, the other legend of the pink lemonade was Stranger, which was they ran out of water or they ran out of lemonade completely. And so this guy grabbed a bucket that one of the dancers had been soaking her pink tights in. So the water had been dyed. It was like laundry water that was pink. And he mixed that with the lemons and
That's
served
horrible.
it. I know. But that one's weird enough that like maybe it's true.
I hope that one's not true.
After the break, G Love will share his last meal, and we learn what a fancy pants gourmand he is when he's on tour. What is your last meal? What would you choose to eat for your last meal?
Well, I chose Confit du Canard.
Oh, duck confit.
Duck confit, yeah.
Fancy.
Because I read in the podcast description that you delve into the history of it, so I thought that would be interesting to know more about that. But yeah, I love that dish. It's kind of an impossible question to ask what would be your last meal. And actually, that's one that I don't know how to cook, except for if you buy the pre-made duck confit. Of course, I
Yeah.
can cook that. Yeah, I love that meal. And if I'm in a restaurant and they have confit du canard, duck confit, I will order that.
Okay, quick history lesson at G's request. Duck confit has been around for hundreds of years and originates in the southwest region of France. I mean, France. The duck is first cured in salt, then slowly cooked, submerged in fat, and then it is packed into an airtight jar, completely covered in the oil or animal fat it was cooked in. The result is silky, tender, fall off the bone meat. In French, or shall I say French, confit means to preserve. And that is exactly why this dish was created, to preserve meats before there was refrigeration so you could store them throughout the winter. You can confit garlic, vegetables. The only time that I ever confit at home was when I had a bunch of fresh tuna, and it was the best version of oil-packed tuna I've ever had. Super silky and infused with the grassy flavors of the olive oil and the garlic that I cooked it in.
It'll definitely be on the menu at any traditional French bistro. Basically, the confit is the duck breast that's first rendered or cooked in its own fat. So that's the first process. And then they crisp it, right? They brown it. And it's very crispy. My mouth is watering. It's very crispy. It's very fat. I like to put a little bit of nice, what's the salt I like? The
Malden.
Malden sea salt flakes, like on every little bite. and have it with red wine. And it's typically served with Lyonnaise potatoes, like some really nice, kind of roasted potato slices, and duck fat fries.
Oh, that's good. I like that. Yeah, would it be too much duck fat to have duck confit with duck fat fries?
Hell no.
No, that'd be good.
And maybe a salad on the side.
When did you first encounter this dish? How did it become your last meal? What is it about this dish that means something to you?
Well, I do remember that my mother's a fantastic cook / chef, and my uncle was a chef at a very prestigious restaurant in Washington, D.C. in the 80s. And my grandmother was a chef. We were like a big foodie family. I always like to say, like, yeah, my mom was like growing arugula and serving arugula before like you could buy arugula at the the regular supermarket. Because a lot of things that we enjoy today you couldn't buy in the 70s and 80s because it just wasn't around. Thank God for whole paycheck. They have everything that we can spend our money on.
You're right, though. Like I grew up in California and I didn't know what arugula was until at least the aughts.
Right.
And like my relatives are in New York and we used to mail them sourdough bread from San Francisco because they couldn't get it in the store. Even in the 90s, they couldn't get it in the store.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they probably send you back bagels and smoked fish.
Actually, you know what they would send, which is funny because I wasn't allowed to have this, devil dogs. I loved
wow.
devil dogs. They were so good.
But yes, I do remember my mom making a duck for me for like my birthday one year, and I love that crispy skin. And then later when I started touring, we got to go play in France, and it was so awesome because Sony Music had a lot of money in the 90s, and they would take you out for dinner to all these beautiful places. And I remember this place in Paris, and God, I can't remember the name. It's still there, and it's a restaurant that's like in an old townhouse, and there's all these rooms, different dining rooms that are in, what used to be a living room or a sitting room. Of course, they had confit. I would always order it there whenever I go there. And also, foie gras was just... So yeah, I love French food, and because when we toured Europe, like I took French in high school and then my 1 year of college, so I speak okay French. And when you're touring in Europe for 6 weeks and you can't really speak any of the languages, then finally get to France, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is great. And I love the food.
Yeah, you can finally talk to people.
Except when you talk to French people, they just like look at you and then they answer in English. Like you're an idiot.
I know. So yeah, you mentioned your mom. Your mom was a professional cook, a professional chef, right? What was eating like growing up at home? It sounds like she was making you duck for your birthday. That's pretty fancy. What was the day-to-day like?
Yeah, like it was a big culture in our family, like family dinner, and my mother would make us these amazing dinners every night. And not fancy stuff necessarily, but like some of the staple dishes would be like, roast chicken with rice, and then she'd make like pan gravy, salad or whatever, or she would make this awesome chicken tarragon dish. She'd make an awesome chicken curry. A lot of chicken. Those are 3 of the dishes I remember. They were in regular rotation growing up. Mm-hmm. We grew up going to the Jersey Shore, so she would make the bluefish, which a lot of people don't like, but bluefish is awesome, I think. The bluefish with this like mayonnaise and dill on it, and then they bake it.
Why do people not like bluefish? I don't think I've ever had it. Is it strong flavor?
It's a stronger, and it's oily. It's a darker meat. Bluefish is a little more dense and oily.
Or like a mackerel.
Not that oily. It's very good smoked too, as is mackerel. It still gets a bad rap. I live up in Cape Cod now. People want to catch striped bass. People don't care, but I caught a bluefish. I'm like, yo, give it to me. I want it. I know that's a great recipe, man.
Yeah.
And then, my mom had this like tart business that she was doing a couple summers. The Jersey Shore, she would make these beautiful fruit tarts, and she put the chocolate on the bottom and then creme on glaze, and then all different kind of beautiful fresh fruits like peach or berries or whatever, and they're just so beautiful to look at. She would make those and sell them, and she had a kids cooking class that she taught kids in our kitchen. She did it for like 15 years.
Wow, that's cool.
My wife can cook, but she doesn't care to cook. For me, like my greatest joy and privilege when I'm home off the road is to cook my wife and my boys dinner. It's like a big deal to me. And so like every night is a big thing. So like this weekend, I got this great recipe for roasting a chicken now. And I found it on Instagram where there's just so many great recipes. But this is like the 3 things to make the chicken. You heat the black iron pan in the oven till the oven and the skillet are 400 degrees. You pat the chicken dry, you salt the chicken, put the chicken in the hot pan, put it back in the oven for an hour or till it's done. I take the livers and the giblets and chop them up and put them in a pan gravy with like a whole bulb of garlic. And that is banging. So then I do that.
Just like your mom used to do. Make you guys a good chicken.
And then the next day I do a fried rice. So last night we had the fried rice. I also made the soup last night with the bones and then, whatever vegetables we have in the fridge. So cooking it's a big thing. And my mom turns 80 July 3rd. And my uncle also used to be a chef. He's coming up. So when the two of them get together, it's like game on. And then my sister works in the wine industry. So I expect there to be some delicious wine. My uncle usually comes up with like pounds of foie gras.
Oh my God.
Like it's unbelievable. And so this can be a spectacular food week in a couple weeks for us.
Wow, that's amazing. Amazing. So when you're out on the road, do you miss cooking? I mean, a lot of musicians I talk to say the same thing. It's kind of hard to eat healthy on the road. You don't want to eat before a show. Like what's the contrast? Like, how are you eating when you're not eating foie gras and beautiful roasted chickens?
Yeah, man, it's so hard. Oh, no. So every day as a touring musician, hopefully you're getting a rider, right? Which is basically you have a food hospitality budget.
Yeah.
And for all your liquor and snacks and stuff. So we figured out a long time ago, oh yeah, you can get anything you want that they sell at a grocery store. So we're like, yeah, why do we need to get ham and cheese when we can get pate and, brie? Why don't we get a box of arugula and a whole rotisserie chicken? Why don't we step this up? So why don't we have smoked salmon and bagels? And we have a nice fridge on the bus, so on the days off, we might make some cocktails and Jim will put out like a charcuterie board or something like that. So we do a little bit of gourmet on the bus still.
I love that. That's so great.
Yeah. But it's tough. The schedule on the bus is just terrible for your health because like you said, it's really not a good idea for singers to eat before you play. And so I tend to eat a main meal in the afternoon, and then after the show, I'm just like ravenous. It's a problem.
That's when the arugula comes out.
Well, more like the Oreos and everything else that you shouldn't be eating.
Yeah. And that was G Love's last meal. There are lots of opportunities to hear him play this summer.
Our summer tour kicks up in the beginning of July.
Okay.
And goes through August, and we'll be doing a headlining tour with Brett Dennen and Mahali. And then we do some support dates for Sublime with Rome. I'll put a plug in for our festival, which if you're in New England or want to come to New England, Cape Cod, Nauset Beach in Orleans, Massachusetts on October 12th and 13th, the Outermost Roots and Blues Festival. Headlining one night is Slightly Stupid. Headlining the second night is a very, very, very special guest, which I'm not allowed to announce the name.
Oh.
But if you know me, you might know who that person might be.
I know. He's been on this show too.
Oh, okay.
If I'm right.
But yeah. It hasn't even officially announced yet,
okay.
But I'm announcing it to you and your fans. So
Sweet.
Thank you guys.
I'm assuming you're playing there too.
Oh yeah, I'm playing. I'll be there. I'll be all over the place.
Okay, cool. Why did you want to do your own festival?
It was always a dream to be able to curate a festival because a lot of my friends happen to be some of the world's greatest musicians. It's right by the beach and here in Cape Cod, and it's a dream come true, And now I know at least I'll be always booked on one festival at least a year.
Right. Yeah. If you build it, yourself will come.
Yes.
I hope you're going to have like a little foie gras booth and a little Confit booth.
Well, we'll definitely have shucking stations because, we're here in New England. So there'll be a lot of oysters and clams.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It was so nice chatting with you. I've been a fan for so many years, and you're such a nice person. It was lovely to meet you.
Well, thank you so much, Rachel. And just lastly, I love your Daryl Hall and John Oates shirt.
Oh, thanks.
I got to tour with them a couple years back, and those guys are great.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I got this actually when I was a barista in Chico, maybe in 2001. And my coworker was like, I found this in our shed. So I feel like, I don't know how old this is, because even then it was old, and it's so soft.
It's probably worth like $1,000 in LA.
I'm just walking around in a shirt made of money.
Yeah. And Daryl Hall's hair is perfect, in case you're wondering. Oh my God, yeah. It's like this blonde coif, and yeah, what an unbelievable show.
I've had John Oates on this show.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. Well, you take care. It was so nice to meet you. Thank you so much for your time.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon. Thanks, Rachel. All right. Bye-bye.
Your Last Meal is a product of Seattle's Cascade PBS. This episode was produced with Isaac Kaplan-Wollner, who also mixed and mastered it. I created, host, and co-produce Your Last Meal. Original theme music by Prom Queen. Oh, and make sure to tune into The Leftovers next Thursday to hear even more with G-Love and the stories behind your favorite cereal mascots.
Post cereals, their very first cereal, it was called Elijah's Manna, and the boxes actually had a picture of Elijah on the front, so he was probably the only Old Testament character to ever serve as a cereal mascot.
Make sure you are subscribed to Your Last Meal so you never miss an episode. That includes The Leftovers. It's all in the same feed. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please write us a little review. Just a quick one. You can just say, I like the show. That's it. The more reviews the show gets, the more we show up in the algorithm, giving more people an opportunity to listen, which will keep the show on the air. You can follow along on Instagram, Hello Rachel Bell, and I have a newsletter, rachelbell.substack.com. All of this is linked in the show notes, along with a link to my TV show, The Nosh with Rachel Bell. I'm Rachel Bell, and this is Your Last Meal.
But I just have lemonade, all my kids tattooed, and then one other one. So many roads. Actually, it was an S for my ex-person. And,
your ex-John.
My ex-John. And so then when that didn't work out, I said So Many Roads, which is the name of one of my favorite John Hammond records. Don't tell my wife that I'm talking about that.
I'm glad that you just had the S, though, because it would have been harder to cover up if it was like the full name.
There's jokes about that.
I remember, do you know I think it's only a West Coast thing. Do you know Thrifty's? It was like a drugstore that you could also get ice cream scoops at.
I don't know. No, I don't know.
Okay, so there was one in my hometown in the Bay Area, and the guy that worked there, this was in the mid 90s. He still had like the 70s Farrah Fawcett hair. And then he had this tattoo on his forearm that was this woman's face, and she had the Farrah Fawcett. And I remember I was in high school. I asked him, oh, who's that lady? And his whole expression changed. And he was like, that's my ex-wife. Like, that sucks. You can't cover that up easily. Today on the program, G-Love. Today on the program, G-Love. It's G-Love. It's G-Love.